So maybe you haven't started your family tree yet, or you have a family tree that's been passed down from somebody in your family. It could look like something like this. It's a lot of pages with just names and lists, and with a lot of pages with just a list of names and dates, or maybe even have something a little more graphical like this. In this video, I'm going to show you how to take no family tree, or a family tree like one of those, and turn it into something that looks like this, or this. And I'll show you how to start building and adding to it using a tool that is completely free. I know that this can be daunting, so I want to make sure that we cover all the details so that you can feel confident in starting your own family tree on WikiTree, which is a tool that we'll be using. By the end of the video, you'll have at least 3 generations added to your family tree, and even more if you're a parent or a grandparent. Oh yeah, and I'm going to do it all in less than 5 minutes. Okay? But don't press the start button on the timer quite yet. Before we start the timer, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about WikiTree. It's the tool that we'll be using to create our family tree. It's a free family tree website, and it's actually not just a tool, it's a whole community. The goal of WikiTree is to create one world tree with one profile for every person that we have a record of. Now that sounds like a big task to make a family tree that has everybody on it. So at the point I'm recording this video, they already have over 33 million profiles with just over 11 million with DNA test connections. And this is powered by just under 1 million members from around the world. In simple terms, if you had a third cousin, this means you have a common ancestor being your second great-grandparents. If you were both on WikiTree and building your family trees out separately, as you moved up and added in the next generation, eventually you guys would come to the same person. So if your cousin had already added your second great-grandparent because they got to it first, when you went to add them, you would be able to find that profile and just join it to your section of the family tree that you've already built. And this is the way it works, so then you can then collaborate and build further. You can work on growing that part of your family line together with your second cousin. And you never know, you might just meet cousins you had no idea that even existed. And that's one of the great things about WikiTree. And because they're creating a one world tree and have all kinds of profiles there, you can check to see how you relate to anybody that exists on the tree. Not even necessarily related, but how far you are away from being able to be connected. For example, if you want to know how closely you're connected to King Charles, you can do that. And if you want to know how closely you're connected to your first teenage crush, whether it be a movie star or a musician, if they're on WikiTree, you can find that too. Okay, so are you ready to start the clock? But one last thing, before we do that, what you'll need to do is go onto wikitree.com. At the very top, there's a button that says Login. So you're going to click on that. Since you don't have a profile already, you're going to create your profile. So you're going to click where it says click here to register. Now you're going to put in your first name and your last name. It's really important to put in your last name at birth. So if you're a married woman and you have a different name now, you put in your birth name because that's what's going to be connected. And remember, that's really important whenever you're adding any female ancestors or descendants that we're adding their last name at birth. So you're going to create the general things, set up your password, etc. There's privacy policy. You're not a robot, I'm assuming, or you're probably not looking up your family tree. So to prove you're not a robot, it asks you how to spell the word 6. So if you're not sure how to do that, it's S-I-X. I guess I should assume you do. So when you sign up, a few things are going to happen. You're going to get an email confirming that it's you to your email. It has an honor code. It has privacy for living relatives to make sure that their files and their names aren't visible to the public, you can allow people to make them visible if you have other family members that you're collaborating with. The other neat thing is pretty much right away you'll get an email from a greeter. And this is a live, real person. No matter what day of the week, what time of day you sign up, they have a real person that greets all new members and is there to help you if you have any questions getting started. And they're just volunteers, so be gentle. So I already have a profile, and I'm not going to create a second profile for myself to show you how to do this. So what I'm going to be doing is using a family from a one-place study, and that's a study I'm doing on WikiTree about the small little mining community where my grandfather grew up in, called Donkin, which is in Cape Breton Island, Nova Scotia. So I'll be using that family as if they were my own. So I'm going to be starting out with Colin Steele, is his name. Okay, so let's start that clock now. So the first thing I'm going to do is add the parents. And this is the best way to add them. You just, in the profile, you should see son of or daughter of, if you're a woman, and you choose father and click on it, and it's going to ask you to start putting up their name. You're going to click on create a new profile. Colin's father's name was Alexander, and he was born in 1889. So I'm going to add Alexander, and it already knows that his last name is Steele. For his birth date, I don't know it. At the exact date, I do know, like I said, that he was born in 1889. According to the census, that was the year. I'm just going to put, it's an estimate. You could put the exact date of your father's birthday, which hopefully you'll know, and the location. If you start typing community, it's really neat here. It does give you options. I didn't know there were so many other places named Donkin in the world. Don't have a death date, because I did not find a death record. And that's not uncommon just because of the time frame, and you definitely won't have this with your, probably the records for your own parents or grandparents, depending on where you are. But in Nova Scotia, which is where I'm assuming he died, their records, if you died after 1970, that record's not available to the public yet. And most jurisdictions have a rule for births and deaths. It varies a little different from place to place. You'll have to check where you're local when you get into doing that research later. Like I said, this is your immediate family, so you'll probably know this information. If they're still alive, it's really important that you put the blank because living. I'm assuming since he was born in 1889, he's passed away. I'm going to add him. When you add people, you don't have to search first because it will come up with records to see if it matches. Since all I know about him was that he was born in Nova Scotia in 1889, so I'm going to look here and quickly, I'm going to see it does not seem that there's a match. I'm going to say none of these is a match, and it'll be a little difficult with your own parent or a grandparent. If somebody else actually has a record from them, it might just say your last name and living, and that could be them. In that case, until you find the cousin whoever set up that record, you're not necessarily going to know for sure. So you're going to enter them as a new record. There's always a way when you find out if you've added somebody that's already there to go back and merge them later. That'll be something in another video. Sources, this is where you would usually put any record information you have. This is something that you know. You can actually type personal recollection. So you can type that. In this case, I do have a record form. So I'm going to actually I'm going to choose source will be added by me, and I'm just going to add that in the next step. Because I already have that sort of all ready to go. So once you have the information, you can add biography. You can add as much as you want. For example, I'm going to show you what I've done on my family. Now this is my father's. So I do have a biography here of my father. My father passed away almost 7 years ago. And it talks a little bit about him here. You can put as much work as you want in the biography. So I'm going to save it. Now you can put a note here. This is just my initial one, so I'm just adding sources, and I'm going to save and commit changes. Now we have Alexander. So this would be your father. So the next thing you want to do is you want to add your mother. So that would be his spouse. So you would go through the same steps for adding his mother's profile as you did his father. Just remember, with female profiles, we're always adding the last name at birth. Now, it will, when you add them as a spouse, this is where it's really nice. There's two things. You want to choose if you add it yourself. So in this case, you're going to choose that you're their child, because remember, we add it as a spouse, and you're going to put the marriage date and then the location. And if there was a divorce, you can also put in that information. So now we have Mary, and we have that she is the wife of Alexander, and she is the mother of Colin Francis. Now we're going to go back to Alexander. We're going to add Alexander's parents. This would be your grandparents. And again, with the grandparents, you just add them the same way as you added the other profiles. And there's a record, a very nice little quick biography. Let's check, see how much time that was. There are a few things I'm going to point out here that you're going to notice on every record you create. You'll be the profile manager. There'll be a comments section. This is really useful for you to use when you're posting or making a change to somebody else's. Sometimes you'll see other comments there. Now, I said I was going to make your tree look like the ones I showed you at the beginning. So we're going to go back to Colin. So we have to get back to Colin. Normally, you'll be able to just get back to yourself. You can click on your own profile. So we're going back to Colin, and you'll find this under Family Trees and Tools. When you do this, it's going to give you the basic pedigree. Here, like I said, there's 3 generations. If you were using, had your children or grandchildren, you could add them as your own children, grandchildren, very similar way as you add anybody else. But the other chart I showed you at the beginning was what's called a fan chart. It's a really good chart. It's one I really like to use. It's just if you go down here, and I'm going to explain why it's one of my favorite charts to use. Just click on fan chart. We're not looking at 5 generations. We're just going to do 3 generations because that's all I have. But you can spread that out. In fact, I'm just going to show you. If I go back to me, my pedigree, and it goes up farther, but it only shows you so many generations, that first page. But if I go to fan chart, it will give you all my generations going out. Now I have it set to 5 generations. If I go to 6, this is where it gets to be nice. Because as you start to fill in your family tree, I can easily see where I have work to do. Whereas people that I'm missing that I don't have records, just makes it a little easier to know sort of what places and people you need to add. As you'll see there, my mother's still alive, so she's listed as private. Gives a little bit of information. It won't even put her last name there. Now with this fan chart, there's a few things you can kind of do. You can, once you have some things in here, you can actually add pictures, show them, show photos. We'll add everybody whose image I have. I don't only do that to so many generations just because it does take up space. But I can do a kind of a few other different things. I can color options. I can actually choose to color the country, and this will color different countries differently. This is based on a birth record. So anything here that is red is in Canada. See, I have some Newfoundland relatives that were born in Newfoundland, so they're this kind of teal color. So my mother's father's mother, she was actually immigrated from Scotland, so you'll see she's Scottish. It says United Kingdom, but I know specifically that is Scotland. And as well is my grandmother's great grandfather. He was from Scotland, so again, he shows up in that yellow. It will go on like that. You can do a few other things. That's kind of a neat one that I like. So let's go back, and you can go back to your record. Since it's yourself, you can always click on my WikiTree, and then you can click on your information there. So now that your family tree is started and you have your first 3 generations added to WikiTree, you're ready to start researching and adding sources. We'll cover that in this video here.